And we're live.
We are live. I always love that.
And it's 8 o'clock on the eastern seaboard of Australia. And it's shooting the shit. Aussie Craft Distillers shooting the shit. And that's what we're going to be doing. And tonight we're doing it with Brendan Carter from Applewood Distillery. That's the plan.
Thanks for having us along.
No worries. That's the memo that came through. So how are you, Brendan?
Yeah, good. Yeah, at the moment things are keeping us pretty busy. We're not plagued with all the crazy downpours that are all happening on the East Coast. Although I will say that there's a flood warning for Lake Eyre, which has really disrupted my plans for next week. So yeah, all topsy-turvy with the environment right now. Sorry?
Are they fun plans that have been disrupted, or work
I
plans?
tend not to make shit plans, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, no, definitely. Anything out in the red centre is going to be a fun plan. No, yeah, unfortunately it did. So the Unidata track's closed. So I need to try to find another way to get to the red centre that's maybe less fun.
Right.
Right.
You
Okay.
probably sail there at the
I'd love
moment.
to go there one day, but
Oh, you got it. You love it.
would be lovely.
Pretty regular. All right. Well, let's kick it off with some alcohol. That's my suggestion.
That's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, I think I need one. So we're all got a drink in hand. So I will show you what I've got in hand. Oh no, Brendan's going to show us what he's got in hand. What are you drinking, Brendan?
Mate, I am on the tee right now until, I know, unfortunately, I've got a big run coming up on the weekend. So after that, I'll definitely be wrapping my lips around a fair few cold ones. Absolutely.
But what sort
it's a big run.
It's been like a physical run.
Yeah, like a ultra. I do an ultra marathon. So about 58 Ks, about 2K elevation, and out in the trail.
Sounds like fun.
I'm exhausted just thinking about that. Literally, my heart's pounding, going, "Don't do that to me."
I do it because I like the pain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It'll be like small business ownership, really.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a spare time on your hands too there, Brendan. So what's the secret behind that?
Well, I don't have spare time. I just go quickly, Craig.
Just go get it done.
Yeah, I reckon I could do 6 hours. Yep, that should be about right. But long story short, not so keen on drinking to that will stuff me up. At the moment. But what do you guys drink?
I've done some form of physical thing like that. I did the Sydney to Wollongong bike ride, and my preparation consisted of carb loading the night before on beers.
I mean, yeah. I was going to say, carb loading is good. Beers isn't carb loading. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Well done.
It did nearly kill me, but I thought I was doing the right thing. I mean, carbs. All carbs are the same, aren't they?
Yeah, sure.
And you did it once, Luke, and once only by the sounds of it.
I actually did it 3 times. Yeah, didn't learn. So when you do finish your marathon, and the first thing you can be looking forward to cracking, will it be one of your wines or a beer or a spirit?
Oh man, I've been dreaming about this for at least a week and a half. I have a soft spot for the old bush chook. It's like one of my nasty little secrets. I really love Emu Export. So I'll probably end up cracking one of those first. It's more like a stack of cards, really. When you finish a run like that. So I'll start off with there, and then I'll graduate. Probably wine's a little bit different. You've got to take a bit more time with wine, but I'd probably jump straight to a Mistell, so like a fortified wine. And then we're trialing a new product at the moment that I'm having to continually go back to, which is playing around with a sipping gin. but that's been all matured all in native timber. And so right before we go off on a big camping trip for a couple of weeks, I just want to check to see if I've got the right batch in the car, because I won't be coming back for a different one.
Well, we might circle back to that.
Sure.
Because that sounds interesting. What are you drinking, Crafty?
Oh, some rum.
Rum. Australian dark rum, overproof, Blackgate. Nice.
Dark rum, because that's the type of night I think I need one of these. So yeah,
Something a little stronger.
a little stronger, yeah.
Yeah.
And well, yeah, that's syrupy. That's just nice. So yeah, so I'll be enjoying that. What about yourself? What are you on?
One of my usual favourites.
Kinglake. Yeah, nice.
I'm a
Kinglake
bit blurry there. Hold on. If I put my face behind it, it might. There you go. Look.
There you go.
Almost. Or if I just.
You know,
I don't know. You know,
look for some random green label.
I don't know how this shit works. But that's the Grady stand, which I have a couple of bottles of, and I love it. Good everyday drinker.
Yeah, no, great whiskey, that one. What about you, Todd? What are you up to? What do you got?
So I'm going Amber Lane, liquid amber. So
yes, right.
These guys are making some really good stuff. So,
and you've done a bit of damage to that bottle.
Yeah. Well, remember, there's two in my house that drink this, and
yes,
yeah, trying to find one that the wife doesn't like, but unfortunately,
failing miserably.
No such luck.
All right. Well, let's talk, Brendan. Let's talk about. Yeah, there's a lot to Applewood. I mean, when you look at the website, it is one of the most in-depth, informative websites that I've seen in quite some time. It's a beautiful website, actually. Compliments on the website, but there's a lot of tentacles. You're not a straight foot operation, are you? You're not making one product, putting it into a bottle and selling it. And there's a fair bit of history there as well. So for those that don't know, what is the history of Applewood, and also you're a winemaker, a distiller, and chief thinker. I think that's the term you use. Was it chief thinker?
Well, it probably makes more sense when you read what my wife's email signature is, which is chief doer. So really, there's just one of us that's creating the mess, and the only one that's actually getting any work done is Laura. Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, really well observed as well. Like, there's a lot of tentacles to what we do. It is pretty cerebral, more so than I suppose, like, because we didn't actually start with the inception of being like a gin brand. That concept even now is very foreign to me. I've really struggled with that, but and a bit of a history there for sure. Absolutely, most people and probably surprised to know that we started well and truly before Four Pillars. Like, they weren't even in existence. West Winds Gin existed, but it was called Trade Winds when we started. We started as a means to fix an agricultural problem in Australia. And it's just gin was the logical solution to that. And it still may not be the ideal one, but for now it seems to be kind of where we're at. But if it changes, we will change what we make. And I think that's the other thing that means that we kind of don't want to build a gin brand. And we're continually experimenting, actually just trying to find a better way to fix the problem, that's all we want to see. That problem being that 99% of everything we grow in Australia to feed the nation isn't actually from Australia. And then we have numerous issues when it comes to soil fertility, numerous issues when it comes to the sustainability of the industry, not just from an ecological standpoint, but largely a financial standpoint. The fact that most of the things that we plant here are just not built for the soil that it grows on or the climate it grows in. So we tend to try to do stuff to the land as chipping away at it over time, but now it's sort of starting to become a little bit more critical. So the trick for us was, well, we need to monetize native ingredients to incentivize farmers to put it in the ground, and effectively displace things that are not native. But we don't just do that with in the horticulture industry or agriculture. We're looking also in viniculture or viticulture. Winemaking. We don't make Shiraz, we don't make Chardonnay because they come from Burgundy. Where it gets 1.5 meters of rain a year and 150 days of sunshine, and we think it's a real smart idea to plant it in the Riverland with 300 days of sunshine a year with 300 mil of rain. It's just silly. What do you expect was going to happen? And so we'll do wines that are things like Fiano or Nerodava. Great varieties have actually evolved in places that have comparable climatic conditions to our own, and then build on. And thank you for pointing out the website as well. I actually think it's got a lot of work to do. So it's one of those things you only see your own handiwork through its flaws, I guess. But the trick then is, well, how do you get people to try things that they have no idea? Like, say, hey, would you like a glass of Fiano? And you're like, what the bloody hell is Fiano? Do you want to try rye berries or, bush tomato, of which is just an anglicized way? It's actually called Pagetta. Do you want to try some Pagetta? What the bloody hell is that? Or a really nice way to do that, a really good, approachable, fun and digestible way to do that is with other botanically loaded beverages, hence Applewood being, I guess, the most botanically loaded beverage or spirit that we could possibly come up, or as the human race is selected upon, gin as its beverage of choice for botanical richness. There are other niche ones out there, of course, and then liqueurs, Amaro or Amari, that are dense representations of a botanical spread of a particular area, of which I think Australia could really do incredibly well at. Given that, I guess every country that Italy is a great example. They make wine in every region, and then if they can't make wine, they grab all the fruits, all the herbs, everything that's growing around the place. They macerate it into either a wine or a spirit base, and they have a botanical expression of that place, a cultural expression of that place.
Right.
And that starts to tear around the cerebral nature of what we're trying to do here, which is actually try to understand. I guess from a more intellectual basis, what does it mean to make Aussie spirits? What does it mean to make Aussie drinks? When we go all the way back, thousands of years, the things that have built culture for human beings, for Homo sapiens, has been food, booze, and stories. Stories could be art, could be music, forms of communication. You would come to a different area and they'd share with you the local food, tell you, welcome you to country. Tell you about the things that you can and can't do, tell you about the things you can and can't eat. And if you still didn't trust the person from across from you, you would share with them a beverage. And even in this country, plenty of evidence of alcohol use, albeit very low alcohol use, for beverages, even in and this is unsolicited across every section of Homo sapiens development across the planet. And without contact, we have actually all formed the exact same ways to share our culture. And so for us, we're saying, well, what's Aussie food? I want to define and help and understand and appreciate and be a part of Aussie culture. We all know. I reckon if I asked all of us, what does it mean to be Australian? We're going to have vastly different ideas of it. But I grew up in not this country, and so did my wife. We didn't grow up here. We grew up traveling quite a lot, and we got to experience what it was like to be in a country that has a very unified culture. Countries like Thailand, countries like Japan or South Africa, countries like Italy, and what that culture can do to the people within it and the environment is massive. And I think we're missing the three biggest links. We ignore most of the good Aussie stories. We've got a good 50,000 years on top of other people and other cultures, and we ignore most of those. We don't really have a true appreciation for what Australian food is because we don't even grow stuff that's native to here. And Aussie booze, well, that's tough. We don't have distillation. Isn't actually a part of our, historical culture. It is quite a relatively new thing. But maybe we can benefit, where we can contribute to that culture, be a part of it, put it on a pedestal, and then see what comes from that. maybe make distillation a part of that culture. You know, that's how we started. That's why we've got Applewood, Unico, that does the wines, and Oka that does the liqueurs. And we use some form of, I don't know, perceived marketing prowess to get people to try new and different things.
Wow.
That's a lot.
So there's a lot there to unpack.
There is a lot there to unpack. And I'm just trying to think with which one do we start, and
there's an evolution there, isn't there? There's an evolution.
Absolutely. What came first for you?
All three of it came. Or sorry, there was actually another aspect, which is a growers cooperative wine label, but it actually all started pretty much within about 6 months of each other, about 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
Wow.
Really building on. Well, here's the thing. It's not like some kind of weird genius or anything. It's just trying to boil things down to simplicity. You look at, say, farming systems that feed themselves. Permaculture is probably a very smart one, but there's plenty of other. Masanobu Fukuoka farming is another really great one. You need to have at least 3 elements feeding each other as checks and balances. So we started basically a winery. We're winemakers by trade, so that's the industry we knew. With a strict competitive advantage. Our grapes don't need water, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, not as a philosophy, just literally as common sense. The ramping up, the turning up to 11 of that expression is with native ingredients, which we have with the distillery. Any money that we make out of the wineries are actually quite profitable things. We just burn it all straight into the distillery, which causes more long-term profitability. And then we have growers cooperative side of things that recently we've had to change up. But basically in a grower within a 10-kilometre radius, could rain, hail or shine, just drop their produce off to us, would turn it into amazing wine and sell the wine, give them a 50% profit share. That was earning them around about 400% more than they were getting selling the fruit to anybody else. Wow. Now, what we'd do with our 50% was put it into a high interest earnings account they could access for interest-free loans to establish either quantifiably better grape varieties for their site, which we identified with Unico, or if they were horticulturalists or agriculturalists, or perhaps, which is very common, plenty of sites around here that just simply grow grapes because it's good money, not grow grapes because it's common sense. So we would then get them to plant native ingredients and then give them a supply contract through Applewood to keep them sustainable financially until such time as the industry hits critical mass.
Wow.
And so that feeds each, and that continually just, feeds and feeds and feeds.
Are we going to say this? You're trying to get together.
It's mind-boggling how you've put all of that in place within 6 months of each other, grown it to that level that you're able to then offer that support. And
all right. Well, back. You should backtrack a bit, because for the first 5 years, we're nearly bankrupt at least 8 times. We lived out the back here. We still have the building here in a building built out of cold room panels that I built with a forklift, a wrench, and a circular saw. But for 5 years, pummeling everything that we own into it. We could only start actually giving loans out after the first 8 years. Which we've given out $250,000 worth of loans to farmers since then.
Wow.
So it does, because if you tag your business at the speed of agriculture, not the speed of brand growth and blitz scaling and the speed of business and transactions, if you tag it to the speed of agriculture, it's going to be a long, slow road. But I tell you what, cost of goods doesn't really bother me. Supply chain doesn't really bother me. Operating expenses doesn't really bother me. My input costs are very low. And you build what's called diversity and resilience. You're literally just mimicking nature. That's all you're actually doing. Just in the business model. Yeah. Seems smart to me. It seems like if human beings died out, we'd be populated by plants very quickly. And so the idea is to make a business so damn resilient, it's like a plant. It's actually that simple.
So where did your business acumen come from then? Was that... You said you were winemaking by trade. I mean, there's winemaking, and then there's having this sort of sustainable vision I guess, and being able to join all of those dots together, that's something a little different. Where did that come from?
I think because for me, no, not too well, yeah, dumb luck. I think it's you can really struggle by thinking that there's lots of dots to join when and to be honest, it's actually the English language is the thing that actually trips people up, because we have terrible definitions for things. You talk about things like sustainability and winemaking; they are the same thing to me. Like you don't go, I'm going to be a sustainable winemaker. I'm like, good for you. That's sort of being a good human being. You know, talking about sustainable models and unsustainable models, things that doesn't really. So unsustainable models just in my head just shouldn't exist. It's just a matter of time. And I suppose it was perhaps it was probably really, really easy for me to consider things like time as an element for a lot of what we were doing, because Laura and I started all of this when I was 19, and I was 20 and she was 19. So any decision that we had to make, it was always like, well, we make a decision today. What's it going to look like when I'm 50? What's it going to look like when I'm sort of 60? And I was studying winemaking at the time in front of probably the preeminent viticulturalist in Australia, a guy called Peter Dry. He fronts up to the class and he's just like, I made the first Chardonnay in Australia in 1973 in a lab. And I was like, wow, that's I mean, not within my lifetime, but certainly within, you know, an older sibling's lifetime. And Chardonnay seemed to do a lot for Australia. So at any point, his point was, at any point in time, you know, someone is doing something today that is going to be so damn impactful. Like, don't think that we've just figured everything out and the world's in stasis right now. It's how science works. We're continually figuring things out as we go. And you need to be completely self-evaluative as you go. And so I don't know. I didn't think there was any sort of business acumen per se. It's not like you just kind of try to simplify things and you go, well, I look at a car. It's a great car, and I can continue to look at that car and watch it degrade. That car, that amazing $80,000 investment will eventually just rust and fall away. Tell you what, though, the tree behind it has grown fucking astronomical in the last 15 years. Like, what would you rather be, the car or the tree? You know, so it's all right. I'm gonna go, well, how does a plant do it? It really is that simple when you just try to like simplify it down in that way. So we just treat business the same. You know, how can we continually diverse? How do we continually do the thing that we're not doing, or the thing that's going to kill us next? How do we continually be adaptive? That's why we do so many things. Hey, then what happens next is how the hell do you market all of that? How the hell do you sell all of that? Yeah. Which provides your I guess back pressure on the whole company, doesn't it? Yeah. Because if you don't have the resources to market it, what's going to happen? You know, you've got to shrink. All right. So we're actually actively growing our business smaller right now. Actively and kind of going, well, how can we actually navigate growing smaller? Because then we need to hold, you know, like Braveheart, hold, and then now we've got cash resources. Cool, let's keep going. You know, that's the natural. It's when people get greedy and want to do things yesterday and want to speed up a natural course of things. That's where there is only luck on your side when it comes to actually achieving that. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, that's from what I've been able to observe through my eyes, and so I just prefer not to leave things to luck.
I think.
Was this more than you were bargaining for?
Absorb and then process and figure out what is the next logical question to go from there, because it's like there is so much there to unpack.
Well, let's talk about something that I know you guys are going to get a kick out of. I just know you're going to get a kick out of this. Let's talk about whiskey appellation bullshit in Australia. Because this everything that I've just said previously should apply to exactly and make sense now that I'll point out the fact that I don't understand nor appreciate, and to be honest, actually don't really care. But the concept that whiskeys, brandies, whatever, this magical number 2, this arbitrary 2 years in wood, meaning that we are, in one simple stroke, judging distillers in Cairns, the distillers in Broome, the distillers in Tasmania by the same measure, is folly and ridiculous, and a simple case of trying to build something where something doesn't yet exist quickly. It's to be built quickly. And that's something that we're lacking with the ability to be able to make, in my opinion, the best spirit we can make, which is the most Australian spirit we can make. Because trying to make Scotch in Australia, I come from the wine industry where we tried making French wine in Australia for a long time and sucked at it. Only now are we starting to realize what it means to make Australian wine. But if you kind of think and you kind of apply that rule over all of Australia, it is naturally going to favor certain geographic areas as to the quality of their whiskey. Now, there's certain variables we know. We can talk about cask size. We can talk about cask storage. I get all that, but that's quite nuanced in comparison to a sort of a more global or federal, in this instance, law.
But isn't that us. Yeah, it is. But is that not just driven by market expectation? Because Scotch is that minimum 2 years. That's what people expect. It's been single malt. Sorry,
it's minimum 3 years. Yeah.
3 years.
So they're expecting a minimum time.
A minimum time, yes.
But if you're in America and you want to be less than that, you can totally call it whiskey, but you must put the statement on the bottle. So at the same time that we had, people running around trying to, cream up people for releasing whiskies under 2 years, we had Tuttletown Distillery, sending baby bourbon to Australia. No issue. Yep. And bartenders love it. So what problem do we have with an arbitrary number based on the Julian calendar of it's like, why have we chosen this magic number 2? Why couldn't it be 3? Why couldn't it be 1.5? Did we do much trials? At that point in time, the majority of distillation existed in Tasmania, but I don't think it does anymore. It seems to be broader than that. Should we kind of maybe come up to the times a little bit, or maybe start to talk about open innovation, something that actually makes sense? And the concept of market expectations, this is where I tend to lose people. If in Bordeaux, they make a lot of Cabernet. That's their thing. But sometimes Cabernet is just not popular. So do you know what they do? They don't start making something different. They start building stocks. They start building heritage. They start building tradition. They focus on quality, but they don't just bend to the market's will. And that's what makes French wine the best in the world. Now, Scotland doesn't change their rules necessarily because there is a lack of market demand. They just start releasing no age shit. They say what Japan does. But we just have this real weird fascination. Australia does this. We seek qualification from other cultures because we're uncomfortable with our own.
Well,
we don't see it everywhere.
We don't have an accepted baseline. Or
what is the baseline? Like why
that's it.
Is anyone having a chat about like how do we want to be represented as a people globally permanently? It's that seems to be a more important conversation than
Well, I think we can't even agree how we want to be seen as people locally.
I think we have a culture issue.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that on a few different levels. So how do you fix it? Yeah. How do you obviously you've got putting it in the context of your business and your approach. You're obviously looking to and are actively fostering the Australian focused grapes and botanicals and all that sort of thing. You've got obviously a great audience for that now, but it's only a small drop in the ocean for the rest of the country. How do we grow that? How do we foster and change the public perception on Australian product versus international?
There's a couple of approaches here. There's the one that everyone wants because it's so human of us to go, we want active action to create change, catalyst stuff. But most actual great change doesn't actually happen actively. It happens passively. If you really want change, then I'll tell you what, in about 15 years time, we'll see millennials with their second round of kids. already, and Gen Z predominating most of the buying power in the country, and boomers having the least and having the greatest wealth, movement from one to the other. So that's naturally going to cause this stuff. It's just we've gotten very used to having things on 3-month cycles, not really having on decade-long cycles. And that, actually, I will say, as a self-respecting millennial, is something we could learn from a boomer. Is actually understanding things that happen just a little bit longer, having a little bit more broader, view on this. So it's more about like why build legislation that's just going to cut our nose off to spite our face when we could just wait. And the best spirits, if we believe that spirit quality is actually what matters, then it'll shine. It'll absolutely shine.
So with a focus on spirits is not the first challenge. The first challenge getting policy, for example, tax, excise, to actually be in step. With,
yes and no. Okay, yeah, all right. The excise question.
Because, that obviously that's a major drama and a major cost to distillers.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
In comparison to winemakers and beer makers, and but specifically winemakers, if we can't get the government to play ball on and be fair with taxation, how can we expect them to also have any form of interest in helping in other areas?
I mean, I've been speaking to my local member about this because, one other thing I'm not too bad at is math. And it's pretty simple math to see what's happening with excise taxation plays taxation of other products, right? So it's because you're adding a percentage to a high base, it just starts running away on you. And it does mean that eventually spirits are literally just going to be priced out of the market. Just all spirits is literally going to be priced out of the market. Of course, more anti-alcohol lobby groups definitely don't mind that happening. That's their, prerogative. Although we do have another issue where the mechanism at which they have rolled out the excise rebate, which, hey, I'm not complaining about not having to pay tax to the government and getting rebates. I don't think anyone would. I certainly use it a little bit differently to other people. And it's when other people go, you know what, that's sick. I'm just going to, for the first 350 grand worth of excise tax, I'm actually going to take that off, bang, the cost of the product. And suddenly we have a flooding of, these weird $35 bottles of spirit that just, okay, so now business models are being built around a rebate. We saw that we've done this before in the wine industry, and it's really dangerous. And it was right at 2008 when it got exposed, where the large wet rebates were equally being used. And just all you to do is, and look, I wouldn't encourage you to do it, because if you're in spirits, don't even look at wet tax law, because it is ridiculous. It is so convoluted now that that's actually what caused the shutting down of the cooperative that was bringing in 4 times the amount of money to actual regional farmers in their pockets than they were getting paid by large companies. The ATO actually shut it down. On the basis of the new interpretations that they've put in place to close loopholes on the wet tax law, which actually runs it completely the opposite of how it was actually intended to work. The rebates were meant to go to rural communities. And so excise has an issue where it's sort of compounding at the moment, and it's not good. The logical sense of the excise tax being so high in comparison to, say, heavy beer is sort of a little bit skewy. Like it's not like people are going out and consuming a pint of gin and a pint of beer, and that's where the volumetric tax sort of runs a little bit, especially with politicians that I've actually found aren't particularly great at math, like really basic math. And so that's where I've gone like, guys, do you know where this is going? Like every single year, this problem is going to get worse. So the concept of, the way we've tackled it, of course, and I'm not involved in any of it. I have more than enough on my plate with everything else that we're doing to actually get involved with this. But, freezing the excise tax, we don't actually need a freeze in the excise tax. We actually don't need a reduction of the excise tax. We actually need a reappointment of the excise tax. It needs to be pegged to something different. And I would say that it needs to be pegged at heavy beer, which would be the most, I guess, diplomatic way of putting it. Because heavy beer would be, vastly like there were drinks coming out that are like 12% alcohol, 11% alcohol in beer, and they're literally half the tax, not like half the tax rate. Now that the wet tax has become so convoluted, though, there is sort of, again, this is how systems work. There are swings and roundabouts. There's tensions and expansions, and the wet tax law has now become so convoluted that now a lot of wineries are like, fuck it, just put us in excise. Just put us in excise. Excise actually is a really simple tax. It is so good, and it's a system that works for most countries. It's brilliant. I actually love the excise system in comparison to wet tax system, and that's where for people that work in beer, because they look at winemakers like they're getting this $1 million holiday, which isn't a $1 million holiday. It's now equalized with the level of wet rebate. I hate wet tax. Wet tax is the most munted tax. It's charged on the second last wholesale sale of a product. What? It's charged based on what you charge it out at. That makes no sense. But if you brought the clout to the wine industry, in which have very strong lobby groups, this is the reason why we have the wet tax rate. It was because of GST when it got applied. The wine industry group was so strong. They're like, we want a different tax. Before excise gets brought into it, and before we're just going to choose a different tax, and we did, and we got away with it. That's how it ended up this way. And so the lobby groups don't really want to see this, but the lobby groups are starting to change anyway. They're after something more simple. But you bring that clout, that political clout in, then suddenly we go, well, let's just look at all the tax rates, and rather than make more matrices of tax rates, compounding the problem, then we can go, it's a unit of alcohol.
Yep.
The only difference that you would apply would be anything to do with social issues, of which I'm going to say cask port should be banned out of existence if we're talking about social issues. That is how you can put something, and probably contentious to say, I think wine in a can. I don't think you should put 3.5 standard drinks in someone's palm of their hand, expecting them to drink it slower. That would be a bad idea. So that way, because I think the consumption rates are going to showcase that whiskey, gin, especially of craft produce, is vastly distinct from 4X Gold by volume.
You're going to smash a case of 4X as opposed to a couple of fingers of a good whiskey.
No, yeah, and you wouldn't want to smash a couple of wings of whiskey anyway. Like the issue is what happens when you lower that tax rate, and that's what happens is the larger companies simply lower the price. So instead of floor price, instead of floor price, do a unified excise tax, and we've fixed the problem.
Have you spoken to the ADA about that?
I'm not so sure I'm the person to talk to about the ADA. I've had too many cease and desists over pragmatic views. There's a few people in the ADA that I don't particularly, but also I'm lucky enough to have seen what's happened in the wine industry, which seems to have grown on a very similar trajectory. We've just kind of had another 100 years. All I know is that right now is the industry is in this very juvenile stage. A lot of I'll just come out and say here, I didn't get a part of the ADA the moment I noticed that the ADA's font type was identical to 4 Pillars. It is literally 4 Pillars logo changed. And who was in charge of that? So the same guy that made 4 Pillars. And it's great. Hey, he's done some great stuff for us. I'm not going to knock him. But the reality is, where I see bias, I'm not interested. And there's a lot of inherent bias. That means that bias clouds things. It clouds us from logical decisions. It clouds us from rationale. And there's just a lot of egos. A lot of people trying to do a lot of things with their companies that, and we're trying to do something really, really, really different. And so we tend to come in and ask things of regulatory bodies that make long-term impact, because our motivations are really distinct and really different. And so, yeah, I'm biding my time somewhat with the ADR. I actually think my time's much more useful on things like bush food associations and boards, or Indigenous engagement boards. Than what's going on there.
Yeah, right.
No offense, guys.
This is an open forum. And this is actually exactly what we're after as well, is to show the different sides of the industry, the different challenges being faced, the different ideas that can help the industry along. The more of that, the better, I think.
Totally, absolutely. Again, it is about diversity, and I'd be a fool and a hypocrite to say that we actually do need brands that operate in different ways to our own. We do need those parts of the industry that create more customers. There's no denying that, but I just don't agree with it.
So who are you? Who are you looking at as trendsetters in the industry? Positive trendsetters in the industry.
Crafty. Actually, no. There's a good point there. Not blowing wind up here, but there is Crafty. You actually exhibit something that I really admire, which is camaraderie. Australian wine only became what it was because of something called brand Barossa. Now, it wasn't a brand. It wasn't like no committee came together to say brand Barossa. Natural wine, the big movement of natural wine, only became a basket range. They don't grow grapes in basket range. It's just a bunch of crazy people that just get together and they bring everyone with them.
Right.
And camaraderie is no one is going to pick up a brand that's a voice of one or two. I'm simply surprised that Bundaberg has managed to grow to the size that it has grown to, being a voice of one. That I actually am very impressed by. But now you have a lot of noise, and the reality is on the pure math of it, we need to, as distillers, engage the export market. We do not have enough people here and enough disposable income to support the size of the industry that is. And I always see these numbers. Oh, how great it is! We have so many more distillers now. We have so much more political clout. And we're not even a big distillery, I wouldn't say. But we are, based on the numbers, one of the biggest exporters. And I'm surprised because our figures aren't exactly that impressive. And so it's engaging with the export market where we get the ability to be able to champion Australian culture globally, and change the perception of Australian culture. But it starts here with camaraderie, because it's not easy. And where it's not easy, you've got to rely on mates. I'm not in the room spruiking all the time, but guaranteed now with 400, 500, however many it is, there's always someone in a room spruiking. So it's really important that we're all on the same team, and we're all actually voting everyone forward. So I'd say that in terms of trendsetters, look, I love, as much as we, in a sense, might compete with them, but I love what Something Wild, or I think they're called 7 Seasons now. I love what they're doing. Great. Indigenous-owned company championing their own heritage, Larrakia heritage. That's awesome. I love Karu. Awesome. And quality as well. Like, there is a big distinction between quality distillation and not quality distillation. Karu have raced away and done some amazing quality distillation, especially for people that actually haven't had formal training in like winemaking or wine science or distillation science that I know of. That is just cool. I have a lot of affection for Bass and Flinders because of keeping brandy alive. I think brandy is incredibly important for our industry. I think it is actually in the future. And indeed, I am so bullish on brandy that I have a 30 hectoliter whiskey kit that I have never used and I'm selling if y'all want it. Because I don't think I can contribute much in the world of whiskey. So anyone that's championing brandy right now, hell, dude, how's this for a trendsetter? Angos, how awesome. Really, and sometimes not changing is actually a good thing. The fact that Angos have continued doing what they're doing in the world of distillation, where 20 years on the front of a bottle means something, or 30 years on the front of a bottle means something, like that's a good thing. So maybe the innovation is actually looking towards doing something well, doing one thing. I think the things that I find annoying about distilleries is that distillery that does whiskey, rum, gin, vodka, fucking everything under the sun. And I'm like, cool, what do you do? What is the best thing you do? And I get there's that jack of all trades thing, but I'm like, how do you translate that overseas? Because they're gonna go, oh, cool, you do gin, great. What sort of style? Oh, London Dry, cool. Well, we're in America, and I can get London Dry from America, and I can get London Dry from London. So at the very best, you're my third choice. And I was just like, okay, we don't make London Dry, we make Australian gin. That's what we make. That's our specialist. We don't try to compete with Campari because we're not Campari, and Campari tells an amazing story about Italian heritage and Italian culture. And we could never have agency over that, but I have agency over a different culture and a different story. So I believe that Oka should sit next to Campari on a global scale. And I believe that very strongly. I think we have a very good case for it. So maybe just figuring out what we do. And this is, again, hypocritical me. I do liqueurs and gin and wine.
You do all the things, yeah.
We also brand them all very differently as well. So we've just got, I guess, the capability to be able to support completely individualized brands.
Yeah. So what is Australian spirits then? What is an Australian spirit? What's your definition of an Australian spirit?
I'm still, first, definition of Australian spirit means, in my mind, this is really contentious. I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend. This is just my views. But I believe that Australian spirit should be 100% of Australia. I think including the base, including the barrel, including what matured the barrel, if it was touched by anything that came from overseas, it's not completely Aussie. That's a fact. We wouldn't accept that in any other food. Do you know how much shit I'd be in if I imported American anything for wine and blended it together and sold it as Australian? And if we're talking about, say, and granted, say there's American oak is widely used in the wine industry, but it rarely forms like as much of a percentage of the final product as, say, whiskey, where we go barrel it's a massive component. It's a massive component. And the easiest sort of guiding light we can look to is go, well, what do the Japanese regard as a Japanese spirit? They're using Japanese bred grains, and even native Japanese grains. Everything's been malted, mashed, milled, all in Japan. They're using Japanese oak. They're maturing it all in Japan, with the exception of the people that are selling Japanese whiskey because it's a brand and then bringing in Scotch. And I get that. It's more about the grander idea of how they built this huge thing that we respect as Japanese whiskey. Wasn't by ripping off other people. Wasn't by going, we need to do 2 years in oak because everyone wants 2 years in oak. It was, how can we translate our culture into that drink and sell Japan to the world? And we give them the ability to be able to experience Japan through a whiskey. And that's when I think it was, okay, are we going to talk about Australian spirit? Well, we need to be able to find a way to give that translation of what Australian culture is. And so I'm thinking we're sort of starting on a bit of the back foot. We need to figure out one problem before we can fix the next problem, but we're continually trying to jump way ahead of ourselves so quickly.
Comes back to our very first cultural problem.
We have a massive cultural problem. It's very, very hard to move away from until we fix it. And so this is where the Jarrah project came about.
All right, tell us about the Jarrah project.
Oh yeah, we have divisive things on Jarrah Project. Mainly because we asked $500 a bottle for it, and I think people are just tired of seeing Australian whiskey so expensive. Okay, Jarrah Project. How do you make an Australian whiskey that's as Australian as it possibly could get? So we used barley that was grown up in Clare Valley, that was malted down at Port Adelaide, that was milled, mashed, and worked out here and fermented in Adelaide Hills. The barrel was 100% native Australian Jarrah that had come from old growth forests. It was cut down in 1890. It was then turned into a wine vat, because up until the 1950s, 100% of all timber used for maturation of spirits or wines in Australia was not quercus, was not oak. That only happened after the Populate or Perish movement. So we actually have a 100-year history of not oak in Australian spirits, which no one really wants to turn this stone over. And so a lot of these old vats that held fortified have been, we worked with a Cooper to acquire those. And then we have gotten them recoopered down into 80-litre octaves. They're seasoned with fortified wine for 90 years. The spirit itself had come from Columbard, which was distilled by Hardy's in 1910. It then was fortified Australian Syrah from the Barossa, and then was matured in the Barossa before the winery was acquired by the Lindner brothers, which was then subsequently acquired by Lion, which has then been subsequently acquired by even bigger fish, and Asahi, I believe. So everything's Japanese now. We then matured the new make for 4 years in those casks, and released it as a complete one-off. And so every aspect of flavour was grown in Australian soil. The only fault I could find on our own behalf there was that barley does not come from Australia. That's the only thing. That's the golden ticket to what I believe is a great Australian wood-aged spirit, is to and to be honest, I tell you what, it actually started to have a bit of spite because of Cameron Symes, because he didn't like the fact that I kind of nudged the whole single malt thing once. And so I looked it over his little laws that he wrote, and he said aged in wood, not aged in oak. So fuck you, buddy. I'm going to go get you some Jarrah, and turn the dials and push the knobs a little bit more and see what comes out of it. So I kid. He's actually done amazing work for we just and I do respect him. I actually do respect him, Cam, a lot. But
which is why you can tell him to go fuck himself. It comes from the deep.
He would do that to me too, and I'm confident. So, and I'd have mutual respect over that. I'm sorry, it's the green tea. It really takes it out of me.
I'll bet. So,
how did it taste, Brendan?
Sorry,
how did it taste compared to what you would say would be conventional whiskey? How did it taste?
So we had going into it a little bit of foresight into the type, what it would do to a spirit, because we had some of the Jarrah's smaller casks, a little 20-litre cask, that we just kind of chuck some brandy or brandy new make in just to see what would happen prior to committing ourselves to this. So we knew that we needed something honeyed, sweet, because you're dealing with, even after this long maturation period, like seasoning period, a lot of sap and tannin, a lot of eucalyptol still. Uncharred, I would say, do not ever put something like native timber uncharred. Definitely use a lot of heavy charring. The smell, imagine peat mixed with that far away smell of, there's a bushfire over there. That smell, because funnily enough, that's what you're smelling in a bushfire, is burning Australian hardwood. And it's, you put it in front of people, and some people, it's, are you familiar with the Scotchman Bunnahabhain?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Some of those things can be really Vegemite-y, like pretty out there. Yeah, that's sort of the vibe that you would get. So it was divisive anyway, just straight off the bat from the nose, because the people that got the creative angle of what we were going with immediately were like, cool, right. It could not be anything other than Australian from the smell. And that's like, you cooked them. You've got that. You're like, that's exactly what we're talking about here. On the palate, smokiness, ashiness for sure. Not overbearing on the back palate. There's always ashiness on the back palate we try to watch out for, because we chose a Pilsner malt. We chose a very light Pilsner malt, and we got it honeyed as all heck. You know, and especially in the early days where we were whiskey's a very, like, whiskey and mash, like just brewing science is actually a very difficult science for a winemaker to understand, because you're dealing with conversion of starches and also cleanliness, because winemakers and distillers, we get to be not clean, but when it comes to brewing, you definitely have to change your mode. And so those early days, a lot of banana ester that just naturally happened, which played straight into our favor. So we had plenty of banana ester. That diacetyl flick was fantastic. And we also weren't able to like mash out very well. So it's a little bit almost like a quasi sour mash that you know, on barley grain. It was actually quite interesting. They kind of provided a little bit of almost like acidity, you know, in the resultant spirit, which sort of melded very well with the eucalyptol. So, you know, we've still got that same batch in Jarrah.
Oh, really?
That was almost 2 years ago. Yeah, and no actual intent to release it. I'm sort of like, I don't know if I don't know if I'm on my deathbed, or you know, there's some terrible sickness or something, and I'm like, then I'll release it right before I die or something like that. Like, I'll just hold on to it as long as I possibly can. But yeah, when we released it, it's really interesting. I don't think people got it.
Yep.
And this is pretty common in a lot of what we do. It's part of the reason why we've kind of like been around so long and just kind of grown so sort of steadily. Like a lot of what we do is so far, like 3-4 years ahead. I don't think the whiskey market in Australia was actually so interested in an Australian expression. I think they really just want to see Scotch in Australia. And then I can't help but thinking that maybe the reason why they want to see that is because we've told them that, and because we've put the laws in place to do that, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. So do you think you paved the way for things like the Backwoods red gum?
So funny. I was at Andy Stiller's our Cooper, and I was at his place around about 4.5 hours ago. Yeah, talking about, because he's got all the Jarrah.
Yep.
And so he's holding all of that for us. And I saw this really red, you know, Jarrah's pretty red. It's dark, like dark maroon. But I saw this really red cask, and I was like, dude, what is that? And he goes, oh, mate, you can't have it. It's all backward stuff. So Andy's really good for weird projects like this. He kind of gives us exclusivity for it, which you know, he'll always call us if someone else wants a cask or something, and we'll release it. Like Sullivan's Cove, you might be familiar with. We're doing some Jarrah.
Heard of them, you know, around the traps.
Yeah.
Nothing amazing, but.
Obviously amazing whiskies. But I'm surprised that they wouldn't have jumped onto it. But maybe maybe we're still 10, 15 years away from realizing this. But the issue I think that we have is like that timber resource is very finite. Is you won't be able to access more, you know, old growth forest Jarrah. They could be upwards of 600-700 years old, these trees that have been seasoned for 90 years. Like, that timber don't exist anymore. What we have started to look at is she oak, as well as blackwood.
Yeah. Okay. How do you pronounce that? She oak.
She oak. She oak is a class of santalum trees, like sandalwood. Very like whispering oaks are types of she oak. But Australia has, particularly South Australia and WA, has some of the most amazing she oak stands that are actually quite, you can grow them sustainably for logging. And amazing tree, nitrogen fixing, and we've actually grabbed the wood, and it smells amazing. It's this I want to see a distiller fuck with, because it smells like wheat bix. It smells like wheat, like Wheaties, like breakfast Wheaties.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can see Australia easily adopting she oak as its oak of choice, because we don't have a native Quercus that I'm aware of.
That'll work well with the Craftworks mash bill, I reckon.
I think any kind of Irish whiskey bill or take on that, I think would be awesome. Would be awesome. Yeah, 100%.
Sorry, I'm sort of monopolizing all the questions. Sorry, guys. I'm going to throw you both under the bus soon. Circling back to one of the main areas that you struggled in terms of producing 100% Australian product was the barley, and barley not being native. Are there, or can you see any, or have you experimented with any native Australian grains, or do you know of any that are coming up?
Yeah, 100%. There's native Australian buckwheat, native Australian millet, native Australian rice. There's most of the grains that are native to Australia are the old grains, triticale, like ancient grains. That's because of a evolutionary fact that Australia is not the new world; it is the old world. We seeded most of the flora globally, funnily enough, and then we broke off as a landmass and have evolved in complete isolation without contact with another landmass. Which the last time our tectonic plate hit anything, we created Papua New Guinea. So it was quite a while ago. So yeah, there's not a lot of barley or barley derivatives here. I mean, maybe millet, but I mean, the subject of a lot of, if you're into what's happening with Indigenous culture and Indigenous food right now, that's pretty much specifically what Bruce Pascoe writes about with Dark Emu. You know, and his experiments, and he's cooked bread with it, done a number of amazing things. The issue that we have is there's no, we know that with a certain amount of irrigation, with a certain amount of treatment, with particular clone grains, you can get a good stable crop of barley, and you can go and harvest it. And we know also all the development that's happened with shortening barley heads to be able to increase the protein accumulation inside the grain. That, you know, we know barley, native millet, even broccoli is at a collective $1 billion thrown at it in its entire lifetime as an agricultural product. And we look at, say, something like citrus glauca, which is desert limes, and it's had like 20 grand. That doesn't pay for much these days.
No,
you know, but strange. There's some really cool things about, even, you know, I know I'm digressing as to, like, you know, native grains, but citrus glauca, like, we have some cool shit in Australia. If the world is citrus, it's really, really hard to graft, because certain citruses graft to certain rootstocks, like citrange rootstock. And that's why when you go to, I'm not sure if you kind of geek out in horticultural shit like I do, but you, like, when you see someone that's grafted three fucking like a pomelo and a mandarin and a grapefruit to a tree, that is actually like amazing. That's like really hard to do. Citrus glauca is the only citrus we know of that can actually graft to everything, and everything can graft to it, because it is the mother of citrus, like all of it. And it grows on 2 inches of rain a year. You know, and we're so fascinated with finger limes, which are equally fascinating in and of their own right. Very visual, very awesome. That's Citrus australasica. That is also another completely native lime, very subtropical. But no one talks about desert limes. You know, not enough anyway. You know, and that's just some of the stuff. Look at Geraldton wax, 400 different types of Geraldton wax, stuff that ranges in flavor from kaffir lime to straight up bush honey when you distill it. No one's doing any research on this stuff. There's no funding available for it. We have our markets. We like them where they are. We don't want to introduce something that will compete with the moneymaker, even when we watch farmers going out of business.
Yeah. there's a lot to think about there, and certainly a lot of room for growth for us as a country, let alone as a distilling and farming industry. There is a lot of opportunity out there for innovation, growth, change, sustainability, and awesomeness.
Well, we should be able to lead the world with it. We already lead the world with a bunch of stuff. You know, the fact that we actually do have a cultural priming to be able to exist outdoors. You know, cultural priming for environmental protection. How awesome is it that we have a reality TV show, border protection or border force? You know, everyone that's grown up in Australia knows that reality TV show. And some lass is coming in from Hong Kong with a whole bunch of dried mushrooms in a bag. And I'm like, oh shit, she's gonna get done. You know, there's something like you try to tell that to someone overseas, and they do not get it. No. You know, so we do have, and you're like, you know, when people go, well, why is this a thing? You're like, well, this is why it's a thing, because Australia is a really sort of borderline, you know, environment. We like to protect it, and you know, it's very fragile in many ways, and very diverse in many ways, and we take it seriously. You know, even my son's learning this already. You know, and he's only 10 months old. You know,
It'll be ingrained very early.
Yeah. In grains or ingrained? Yeah.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah.
Well, certainly I'm excited to see where you're now going to take it all, given everything that we've just heard and are trying to absorb. Where are you taking it next? What's next for Applewood and for all your other brands?
We sat down this year about it because we've been very hesitant in many, like, it seems from an outward perspective, I'm sure that we kind of move quickly. We don't. We just ideate maybe a lot of things quicker than most as a team. And one thing that I've always stood really clear on, which is we won't use any of our business for any sort of political means. And we have to be very wary of the agency that we have over certain stories and certain intellectual property. Now this year, so we sat down with the team and said, all right, we want to actually be very, very proactive on this with Indigenous engagement and actually have that as a hallmark part of our story. And I like most Australians, I think, and I say almost, we call them other Australians, which is technically our term for white Australians, other Australians. Other Australians, we find that intimidating, just like everyone else, but we're very realistic that we need to overcome that. It's not like I have on speed dial, or to be honest, at the start of this year, I sat down with our bar manager, who actually, funnily enough, is Indigenous, Wana, and I was like, hey man, I got a problem. I've got like two friends on my phone that are Indigenous. One I went to school with, and you. That's a problem. That's a big problem. And so he said, oh, do you want to come out into my sort of our nation and our country and help out? And we're like, sure, why not? And so we went out to Gugada country, which is about 3-4 hours drive north to Sejuna, which is in the middle of, it's the south part of the APY lands, and assisted them with, there's like a number of, it's just complete desert. And then there's these sort of granite outcrops, a couple of hours drive across from each other, that have big water holes that are almost like a story deep, but very kind of like rather thin, not very big, maybe only like a couple of meters by a couple of meters. They fill with water. Animals move through the desert out towards the Nullarbor, and they drop off and drink from these water holes and move across. And if you think sheep are dumb, you should try meeting an emu. Because emus will go to these water holes and they will fall in. They can't get out, isn't it? It's smooth. It's completely smooth.
Yeah, right.
We can't let children near them because they won't get out. Adults will struggle to get out. And so like emu will fall in, another emu will come by to try to save his mate, and he'll fall in too. And then you've just got this mess of just, it's quite disgusting, like emu muck, liquefied emus that have poisoned the well. and no funding available to do it. They just go out because this is their chukapa, this is their story, and they go out and they look after it, and they would usually actually survive off these water holes themselves. And we went out there and they need hands, getting emus out. Except they've got old janky setup, no funding. They don't know how to four-wheel drive safely. They've never gone to a four-wheel drive course. How do anyone show them how to do that? That's their skills we have. There's not much use for a distiller out in the middle on country. But I tell you what, we know plumbing, we know electrical work. We could be a chippy in a tight situation. We're really, really good at four-wheel driving. And getting out there. We're really, really good at doing pretty hardy, heavy work and slopping around in gumboots. All right, cool. That's what we're going to do. And so we got invited out again and then again. And we've been taking whole swathes of team, a couple of cars, convoys at a time now, out to actually help them do this stuff. And it's there that conversations have been sparked. Like, we're going around and they're very, very generous, or at least this mob in particular, but we've been invited up to Adnamutna, Ananu, Larija, all through here to Paramank. We engage really strongly with them now, and it's been huge for the team. It's been huge for us. But then, like, going through, and she's like, "Oh, check this out. You smell this thing. It's just bush perfume." Like, "Oh, sure, okay." And I'm like, "Do you have a name for it?" She's like, "Yeah, we've got a name for it, but you're not allowed to know the name for it. But I can tell you it's bush perfume." It's like, "Okay, cool. Smell it." And you're like, "Holy shit, what the fuck is that?" I was like, "Show me the plant. Have a look at the plant." It's like, I have no idea what this thing is. Horticulturally, no clue. Bring it back. Show a very important guy called Neville Bonney. He's written a number of books on native plants, and he's like, "I don't know what this is." Okay, and he's 78, and he is married to an Indigenous lass, has been on Gilgita country many times before, and still doesn't know what it is. So there's so much work to go, but it smells literally like Chanel No. 5. And then so Wanna, because we were like, this sort of funny things when you kind of in this situation, you want to distill it, but I'm a white dude and it's not my story. So Wanna, he's like, "Well, it's my story, my family, I'll distill it." So he jumped on the little lab, distilled it. He goes, "Here, I'll give you permission to taste it." We tasted it. Holy shit, man, this is bonkers. And so we're like, what do we do here? So we're looking at it and going, all right, well, maybe we need to start a non-profit. We need to start because I'll be honest with you guys, I've thrown close to $60,000 taking team members out, paying them on cultural leave to go out to these things, as well as buying a couple of Ford Rangers, doing them up, so we can help the team to actually get out to do its thing. So we're doing a lot more of this actual, like, very active work to contribute to that culture. And now it's like, well, maybe we should have a non-profit that we can put money into that actually help assist us with that, but also start charitable work with let's make a gin with a flavor that no one has ever found before, and give 100% of every drop, and not profit, of revenue. Every drop of revenue straight into that project to help them solidify the future for that chukapa. Why not? The hard thing as a white guy, as another Australian, you just go, well, it's not my thing, and this is like white guys coming in to muck with it. But you also sit down, you build a relationship, and give someone a call. Now I've got at least 50 people on my phone I could call, and be like, "Hey, is this appropriate? Is this right? Is this?" And I tell you what, white guys worry about stuff way more than we need to. It is actually about building the relationship and actually taking an active involvement. And so the future for us is more like, well, this is what we're passionate about. This is there's a number of events that we've been invited out to. I'm like, I can't. I'm on country. There's something different. And I'll tell you a secret as well. The best camping sites, we've given them all back to Indigenous culture, rightly so, but equally they found 50,000 years to find the best camping sites, and they certainly have. And it's insane that you do not know Australia. You're missing out on such an amazing slice.
And you said you're going camping in a couple of weeks.
This one's a little bit different. This one's I want to go out and meet Aminari Napananka. She's an artist up in the West McDonald's, and travel out there. And there's something about I don't know, not to get too deep and meaningful. I'm not actually a spiritual guy, but Kings Canyon, there's something going on there. There is something going on there. And so I've been out 3 or 4 times. Highly encourage you. There's Uluru. There's something going on there too, but there's something distinctly different going on in Kings Canyon that's creepy that I just can't figure out. So I keep finding myself back there.
Wow. Jealous. We're gonna have to go camping with you. I think that's going to be an absolute blast.
Yeah, we do have a good time. Good time with team.
Definitely. Look, I've been uploading all the questions, so I don't know whether the guys have been thinking any in the background.
Just take it. I'm writing.
I'll
I'm
throw it over
holding
here.
on the back.
Where's your little
Very
paddle?
much so tonight. I do
But
have
yeah,
a question.
Fascinating.
I do have a question though, Brendan. You talked about the need to push into export. There's so many distillers, there's so many products out there, and there is a need for pushing out into export. And you've done quite a lot of export. How did you sell it besides being this is an Australian product? How did you manage to open doors and have conversations with people? Because
Good question.
Quite...
We did have a bit of a leg up with the wine side of things,
right?
I suppose. The first thing is actually to have a product that is specifically unique. They talk about, and in the spirits industry, this is remarkably more important than in the wine industry, because in the wine industry we can absorb thousands of wine producers because we have this thing called vintage variation. So every single year it is different. Variation is embraced in the wine industry, where it's abhorred in the spirits industry. You have any form of variation in a product that is designed like a modifying product, like a Oka Island Bitter or a coffee liqueur. Like, you cannot have variation. Bartenders would sacrifice you. And so the big thing is to have a product that is remarkably consistent. You can potentially build a brand of inconsistency, but that's another thing entirely. You kind of need to have your country recognized for distillation at that point in time. So, and that's where things, we go, we make whiskey, and whiskey is inconsistent, and there's in single barrel things. Yeah, but whiskey, there's not a lot of whiskey, say, brought into Australia that aren't from established whiskey producing countries that have highly consistent product already here. So we're the nerds. We aren't the majority. And so the majority is providing scale for the minority to be able to garner access to market, because there can only be one importer of a product. And there's many, say in the States, there's thousands, tens of thousands of importers for products. And so once Glenfiddich is represented in your area, then that importer is probably not going to be interested in bringing another different Scotch into the country. Although maybe another importer who wants to compete with that importer is going to go on and find Glenmorangie, and so on and so forth. And so you would start with a product that is consistent and scalable, because the scale that you think you need, you need to quadruple it or quintuple it. When we're talking about a pallet order, you know how much is in a pallet, but most importers will seek to not do LCL freight. They'll do a full container load, and so they're looking at and 40-foot containers is standard, not 20s. 20s is small town stuff, so you're really looking at 20 pallets of product. Now that potentially could be a conglomerate of producers working together in a cool little portfolio. That's sick. But the spirits industry as well, and whiskey as well. And this is the reason why we didn't start with whiskey. Is a big part of this was a lot of it is pay to play. The cash requirements to actually get access to those markets is really hard and heavily controlled. A really great example of this, again, in the States would be, and very nefarious. So like so it's 3-tiered system. So we're a producer, we have an importer, and the importer has many distributors throughout the States, but very rarely are the same thing. They have some distribution rights in say California and Oregon, Washington, but nowhere else. So say distributor in Tennessee will get a contract with, say, Bacardi. And they're the Bacardi rum rep, all of Tennessee. And so what they'll do is then they'll go out and find 20 other kind of largish, medium-sized white rums and go, hey, we've got Bacardi. We're really, really good at representing white rum. Clearly, they believe in us. Do you want to join our portfolio? And of course, they go, hell yeah. And they go, well, it's a minimum 3-year commitment, so you can't, go to anyone else in 3 years. But we need to put into the contract that there's a minimum, sales rate. But we're going to put that in at sort of 1 bottle a month or something like that. But you know us, we got Bacardi. We're going to sell way more than that. What they'll do is they'll turn around and they'll sell exactly 1 bottle a month of all the competing brands for the next 3 years. So you got to be smart. So it's really hard. I would say from a whiskey standpoint, also because so much whiskey is made globally and locally within those areas. What is the reason why, Crafty, some Leroy in Alabama is going to buy your product when it is immensely cheaper to buy a local product? He feels better buying his mate's product. And it's immensely cheaper to buy imported product from other countries than yours. What is your thing? Now, the things that I rest on is, well, firstly, he can't buy an Australian product. That's a fact. All right. So then I start going, well, does it look Australian? Does it feel Australian? Does it taste Australian? What is the thing that people are going to, and we make all of our buying decisions as completely irrational decisions. We make our buying decisions. Otherwise, we would, if we were completely rational creatures, then we would just all buy one brand, giving it no competition to allow it to have the maximum amount of scalability, to have the cheapest possible price, and we would all be stoked. But we're not stoked with that because flavor is irrational, emotions are irrational, and that's why we buy things. So you need to figure out what your flavor is, just like a musician needs to figure out their sound. Musicians can use inspiration from other places, but they still need to have unique sound. Otherwise, they simply aren't going to be successful. It's the same parallels are drawn in the wine industry and everywhere else. It's not, people get confused thinking that it's a brand on a bottle. The brand is what sells the first bottle. I don't keep coming back because they really like the look of it, because they've already got that. They can buy it once and they own it. They own the brand. They can leave it in their house if they love it so much. They come back because it tastes freaking amazing, and no one else can make that flavor like that person can. And that's how you do it. So Oka is a big example of this. It's a really hard thing to make. I doubt it's been profitable for us at all. But it is, like, there is no joking like how fucked up it makes people's heads when they try to analyze it. A great I had through our wine, long story short, we had the head buyer of the Jumeirah group that come to Australia, a friend of mine, Dimmy. So Dimmy, the Jumeirah group they own this big giant 7-star hotel Sail thing in Dubai.
Right.
Yeah, so they own all those. Yeah. They own basically like 60% of all hospitality in the UAE. And the head buyer came out, and we took him to a restaurant that specialized in native Australian ingredients. And he was munted for life. He has no idea. He kind of came in and he's like, I could have first growth Bordeaux Chateau wine, if I wanted to. I get all my everything gets flown in. I get caviar flown in. I get truffles in season for me every day of the year, because no matter where we are in the world, I can find truffles. He's like, I have no freaking clue what to pair with this. I don't even know how to cook with it. Like, the flavors are so foreign. They don't even know how to describe it. And that's the thing. And it's not about a sustainability thing even for them, because sustainability only matters to the people that are actually locally around you. It matters to Australians that we're sustainable. It doesn't matter to someone in China that they're sustainable in Australia. It does matter that they cannot get access to that flavor by any other means. And that is the key. The key is I like drinking Glenmorangie because I can find stuff that's similar, but typically not at that price point. And why would I pay more for this, the thing that just I can get for this? But I really like the flavor, and that's all it has to be. The rest of it intertwines with story, and then it's just an alignment. The brand has to, has to align with the look of the bottle, the feel of the bottle, the feel of the website, the communication of the staff, to potential customers via email, via text, via Instagram, DM. It all has to be very consistent. That's how we do it. Seems to work.
Simple.
Again, this is a reason why I make the case for like why hamstring our entire industry with this 2-year rule. We're just making more product that looks the same as other product. Like, what if we could make something that looks different, that actually makes some noise, that people go, shit, I gotta play that? Because there's a special thing with that. If we actually find a way to make something that isn't like that, then no one else, because everyone else is appellated, they can't copy it. If we could find a way to do it in a year, they couldn't copy it. And I sort of think as well, when it comes to it, this is a huge one with wine. The best, would we say that the best place to drink Scotch is in Scotland?
Well, the best place to drink Scotch is wherever I am.
But I mean, the experience must be heightened surely by going to the Mecca. Of it.
Oh,
Yes,
absolutely.
right.
Yeah. There would be something very, not having done it, there would be something very special about that, most certainly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing about, it's like growing your own vegetables. When you're cooking your own food, it tastes really good when the vegetables grow right there.
Yeah.
Right. We human beings are like this. When we go to the Mecca of something, things are always heightened. Mainly because things have evolved with locality. They've evolved, Scotch has evolved well and truly before global logistics existed. So the idea of being able to make something for a foreign market was like, why would you do that? We're making things for Scottish people. That's what we're doing. So in the wine industry, this is really clear because it is such a terroir, is such a thing, taste place. The best place to drink Bordeaux is in Bordeaux because they hand selected those grape varieties over 400 years, and those grape varieties have no irrigation, which means they need to be climatically suited. Which means that they have to work the vines to get whatever yield they get out of, and that is inherently a taste of the place. It is the primary fermentation of it. Now, of course, if all the Bordelais were like, this tastes like shit, Ken, why don't you go back and fix up your vines? They would plant something different. And lo and behold, over 400 years, they all agreed that Cabernet Franc, Merlot were the varieties for them, and then evolved a method of making that. Now, in Australia, we look at, what's a drink that's going to be consumed by Australians that we can share that across the rest of the world, instead of thinking, what are the Chinese like drinking? Let's make that. What are the US like drinking? Let's make something for the US. Now, what are the Australians like drinking? Well, 98% of our populace lives by the sea. 2% lives in a rainforest or a desert. It is our diurnal temperature range is massive. So we do get cold nights. I think we've all experienced some pretty hectic cold nights to say that the hot, warm Australia thing isn't exactly true. However, we've all experienced summer. So it's cold, but not for long. And it's hot for a lot longer than it is cold. So what we call our degree days is really quite distinct from the rest of the world. So from the wine industry, what do we make in Australia? We make big, rich, heavy extracted, low acid Shiraz, and we make really rich, alcoholic and oaky Chardonnay. Yum. The exact thing I want to drink by the sea in really hot climate. So, and that's again, it's like, well, what do Aussies like to drink? Lighter. I mean, I'm not a whiskey guy, already made that clear, but I would say maybe erring on the lighter, delicate side, or looking for fruitier, aspects, tropical aspects. We are a giant island. That's something that I don't think anyone's really taken a lot of agency over. And I actually think we have a legitimate agency over being a giant island. And I think that potentially could be the secret to whiskey, is a certain style that could actually define our country that is distinct from the rest of the world, that makes sense the best when you come here and enjoy it. So people can take, you're selling Australia, remember? You're not selling your bottle of whiskey. And so how are you giving people the ability to be able to go home and relive a great Australian experience at home when they live in Laos or Luxembourg? That's if it's just going to be a Scotch ripoff or a bourbon ripoff, then I mean, you're going to do moderately okay as long as you've got a loud mouth. You've got to probably sell the stuff for a while, and then all that investment's going to fizzle, and unless you either sell the company or pass it on.
Food for thought.
I think what you're saying there is quite interesting when you look at Cape Byron Distillery, and what they're doing, and their whiskey is of the place, and their flavour profile from the information that's coming out is it's of the place. So terroir is a very, very big part of the story, but the actual spirit itself. And
there's another good one, in terms of trailblazers, people that I actually genuinely respect. Brookies. They do an incredible job. I tried that with him at the distillery, would have been a year ago now. It wasn't too long before they were releasing it. It's pretty cool. A lot of variability across, it's obviously they're going through this sort of experimental phase, trying to just figure out, there is an import of house style, but incredible. And the fact that, he's incredibly skilled distiller as well. He's become incredibly skilled distiller himself and working with a incredibly skilled distiller who has also fallen in love with Australia.
Yes.
And isn't it fascinating how Australians, we love to be taught by people that don't come from here how great our place is. We do learn an awful lot of lessons from people who aren't from here. And that's something to pay attention to. If other people can see it, why can't we?
Yeah.
Food for thought, definitely there.
Definitely. Well, we've hit the hour and a half mark, so we may need to wrap it up. Do we have any questions from the viewers before we let you go home, seeing as you are still at the distillery? Here we go. Ali.
Ali. So cool to be chiming in, Ali.
The work you lot do. Thank you for sharing your time, and really, really cool stuff. Fascinating from start to end and incredibly inspiring.
Nice.
I love those guys. Love those guys.
They do an all right gin too.
Freaking stunning.
I can't wait to go back and see their new venue.
Have you got a venue opening up? That's cool.
It's open now, and you've been there, Crafty, haven't you?
House of Spirits.
House of Spirits?
Yeah. Small bar, at a 2-minute walk from the distillery.
Yeah.
Maybe another camping trip is on the cards.
Oh, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful spot. Phil, as a startup, you've given me so much more to think about.
I reckon so.
It's good. Here's the cool thing about a startup, though, is that you don't have the baggage of legacy. And that was a huge thing for us, and early stage competitiveness was the fact that you don't actually need to worry about something that you've already done. I've kind of got a problem that if I start doing other stuff, then I kind of need to do a lot of background work to the infrastructure of everything we've built. And so, if you can get it, sort of think about those big questions early on, even if you're like, it won't be successful. We'll just have a bit of a play. Trust me, that's what I did. And I didn't plan for success. I planned against failure. And then when you actually kind of go, oh shit, we got a bit of success here, you were just continually tripping over yourself. And that's the definition of growing pains comes from not planning for success. So just plan for it to be stupidly go. What would happen if I did 10,000 more of this? I just ask that all the time. When stuff comes in, it's like, I'm going to put a little bow on this. And cool. What'll happen when you need to be doing 10,000 of them? All right, maybe let's not put the little bow on it.
Little bits of string come to mind.
Wax dipping bottles.
Oh, man. Someone still should do one of those himself, I think. But that's another story.
Brilliant. Well, Phil, there you go. Phil, makes perfect sense. I will put this up online on. It'll be up on the website, up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Where else are we? Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, all over the place for you to listen back to. And you'll probably have to pause and rewind a few sections
Yeah,
I think,
it's
because there's a
There's
lot.
lot to take in there.
I've seen this one a few times, I reckon. You get something out of it different every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there'll be a nugget in every single listening. Thank you so much, Brendan, for your time and for
Pleasure.
joining us.
Absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you. I was actually genuinely looking forward to it.
Well, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Genuinely inspiring and really, 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 really interesting. Let me just flash up all of the things again. So we've got Applewood Distillery. Obviously, yeah, you've got spirits there. Okar for Okar, not Okar, Okar.
Okay.
However you'd like to pronounce it.
Whatever works.
Both actually work.
They do. So I actually thought it was Okar in a play on Australian isms.
It is.
Yeah,
it's actually works both ways. So it's Ocker.
Yep.
Ocker, Aussies. But also phonetically how Australians say their O's is highly unique. And so hence the O is Oka. Oka. That's actually the phonetic spelling of the word Oka. Plus, I don't think Bass and Flanders would really appreciate me using the actual spelling.
And then
Unicozello.
Unicozello. And I'm definitely going to be jumping on there and buying a few bottles. So, because they look awesome.
Yeah, we make wine pretty fun.
Different. And like I would normally buy a Shiraz.
Cool.
A big meat Shiraz. But I'm looking at your Truffle Hound. And
go Pastafarian. Pastafarian's awesome. I'm loving Pastafarian right now.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will buy a few bottles of that then. Thank you very, very much again. Greatly appreciated. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And please like, subscribe, follow all those things. And we will catch you in... What do we got next, Crafty? Who have we got next? Do you know?
Weeks, 2BA.
2 weeks? You
2BA.
sure?
2BA.
All right. It always is. We'll find out about it 3 days before.
No. All good.
All right. Thanks all. Thanks, Crafty. Thanks, Todd. And thank you very much, Brendan. And we will catch us all in a couple of weeks-ish, maybe.
Pleasure.
Bye.